The standoff begins. March 26, 1945. 9:40 hours. Near the town of Oppenheim, Germany. Cold morning air hangs low over the Rhine Valley, thick with diesel fumes and damp earth. Tank tracks scar the muddy road like fresh wounds. Somewhere in the distance, artillery thuds. Not close enough to panic, close enough to remind everyone where they are. A convoy stops. Engines idle. Metal ticks as it cools. Boots hit the ground. General George S. Patton steps forward, ivory-handled pistols resting untouched at his hips. His helmet sits low, his jaw tight, eyes scanning the scene with predatory calm. He is not rushed. He never is. Ahead of him stands a German commander, mid-40s, tall, uniform worn but immaculate. No helmet. No visible fear. A white surrender flag flutters behind him, tied loosely to a rifle barrel planted in the mud. The men around them, American infantry, German prisoners, staff officers, fall into an uneasy silence. This is not a battlefield clash. This is something more dangerous. The German commander speaks first. His English is clipped, precise. "You will have to kill me." The words land hard. No shouting. No pleading. No raised weapon. Just defiance. A few American soldiers shift their weight. One tightens his grip on an M1 Garand. Another glances at Patton's pistols, expecting motion. A shot. Something decisive. Patton does nothing. He studies the man the way a gambler studies a deck of cards. Slowly. Patiently. Almost amused. The German commander continues, his voice steady now, louder, meant to be heard. "I will not give orders to my men to surrender. Not to you. Not to anyone." The silence stretches. This is late March 1945. The Third Reich is collapsing. The Rhine has been crossed. Patton's Third Army is moving fast, too fast for German command to track properly. Entire divisions are surrendering without a fight. But not this man. Not here. Patton takes a step closer. Mud clings to his polished boots. His face remains unreadable, but his eyes sharpen. He does not shout. He does not threaten. Instead, he asks a simple question. "Do you know who I am?" The German commander nods once. "General Patton." Patton smiles faintly. Not friendly. Calculating. "Then you know," Patton says, "that killing you would be the simplest thing I do today." A few officers inhale sharply. This is the moment. This is where legends are made, where the gun comes out, where defiance meets steel. But Patton doesn't move his hands. He lets the moment breathe. You can almost hear the wind moving through broken branches. Somewhere a tank engine revs, then cuts out. A bird takes flight from a ruined stone wall. Patton steps to the side, breaking the straight line between them. It's subtle. Deliberate. A psychological maneuver. "You think this is about courage?" Patton continues calmly. "You think dying here makes you important?" The German commander's jaw tightens, but he doesn't look away. Patton gestures behind him, not toward his soldiers but toward the road, the horizon, the unseen mass of Allied power rolling east. "This war is already finished," Patton says. "The only question left is how many men die pretending it isn't." The German commander hesitates. Just a fraction of a second. Patton notices. He presses. "You refuse to surrender?" Patton says, voice low, almost conversational. "Fine. I don't need your permission." The German commander frowns. Patton leans in slightly, not threatening, not aggressive. Intimate. Controlled. "I will bypass you. I will move around your position. I will leave you exactly where you are." Pause. Surrounded. Cut off. Forgotten. That lands differently. This is not execution. This is erasure. The German commander glances back, just briefly, toward his men. Tired faces. Mud-streaked uniforms. Teenagers. Old men. Soldiers who know the war is lost even if they won't say it aloud. Patton watches the glance. He says nothing. He doesn't need to. "You told me I'd have to kill you," Patton says at last. "You were wrong." The German commander looks back at him, eyes burning now, not with fear but with something more dangerous. Realization. Patton straightens, voice firm. "You have exactly 1 minute to decide whether you die for nothing, or live with what comes after." He steps back. Turns slightly. Checks his watch. The countdown has begun. And everyone there knows. Whatever happens next will define who truly holds power in this moment. The 1-minute war. March 26, 1945. 9:41 hours. Same road. Same silence. The second hand on Patton's watch begins to move. Tick, tick, tick. No artillery now. No engines. Even the wind seems to pull back as if it doesn't want to interfere. The German commander stands frozen, eyes locked somewhere between Patton's boots and the dirt at his own feet. 1 minute. 60 seconds. In war, that's enough time to take a hill, or lose an army. Patton does not stare at him. That's deliberate. Instead, Patton looks past him. Toward the road. Toward the future. Toward everything this man is about to miss if he makes the wrong choice. That is the cruelty of it. The German commander clears his throat. You think bypassing us changes anything? He says. My men will fight. Patton doesn't answer right away. He lifts his head slightly, studying the sky like a farmer checking weather. I don't think, Patton says. I know. He finally turns his eyes back. You're positioned on a secondary road, he continues. No armor. Limited fuel. No air cover. A beat. You'll fire a few brave shots. My tanks won't stop. My infantry won't slow. By nightfall your ammunition will be gone. The German commander stiffens. Patton takes one step closer, not invading space just enough to reassert gravity. Then my artillery will erase your coordinates from the map. Patton glances toward a nearby ridge, where American forward observers wait with radios. The German commander follows the glance this time. He understands. Patton lowers his voice. And if any of your men survive that, he says, they will be hunted down by units who will not offer this conversation. This is not a threat. It's a forecast. The German commander swallows. His confidence, so carefully constructed, begins to fracture. He had expected anger. Bullets. A theatrical execution. He had not expected inevitability. Behind him, one of his officers shifts nervously. Another German soldier, barely more than a boy, grips his rifle with white knuckles. He keeps glancing at the American tanks, massive and unmoving, like beasts waiting to be unleashed. Patton notices all of it. He always does. Your men are watching you, Patton says quietly. Every one of them. The German commander stiffens again, but this time there's no defiance left, only wait. Patton presses harder now. Decide for them, he says. Or decide for your pride. The second hand reaches the halfway mark. 30 seconds left. Sweat beads on the German commander's temple despite the cold. His breathing changes, shorter now, faster. He is losing control and he knows it. He straightens his uniform jacket, a final gesture of dignity. You assume I fear death, he says. Patton finally smiles, but there's no warmth in it. No, Patton replies. I assume you fear being irrelevant. That cuts deeper than any blade. The German commander's eyes flicker again, this time not toward his men but toward Patton's pistols. They remain holstered, untouched, almost mocking. Patton hasn't reached for them once. He hasn't needed to. The German commander exhales slowly. In that breath is the weight of a collapsing Reich. Of years of propaganda. Of oaths sworn to men who are already dead or hiding in bunkers. He speaks again and his voice is quieter now. If I order surrender, he says, what happens to us? Patton doesn't hesitate. You live, he says. You eat. You're treated as soldiers, not martyrs. The German commander nods faintly. And me? Patton holds his gaze. You go home someday, he says. And you explain to yourself why you chose your men over your ego. The second hand reaches 50 seconds. 10 seconds left. The German commander closes his eyes. Just for a moment. When he opens them again, something has changed. He turns. Faces snap to attention. German soldiers stiffen, waiting for the command they already fear, and secretly hope for. The commander's voice carries now, firm but stripped of defiance. Waffen nieder, he says. Lower your weapons. For half a second, nothing happens. Then rifles begin to fall into the mud. 1, 2, dozens. A sound like rain hitting dirt. American soldiers exhale in disbelief. Some lower their guns slowly as if afraid the moment might break. A lieutenant mutters, Jesus Christ, under his breath. Patton checks his watch. 1 minute has just expired. He steps forward, not triumphantly, not dramatically, just efficiently. To the German commander he says only this. You made the right call. No speech. No lecture. No celebration. Patton turns to his staff. Process the prisoners, he orders. We move in 10 minutes. And just like that it's over. As the German commander is escorted away he looks back once. To Patton. The general does not look back. Because Patton was never fighting the man. He was fighting the moment. And he had already won. But elsewhere, far above this muddy road, Decisions are being made that will put Patton's leadership style under scrutiny, and turn this quiet victory into a controversy that even he won't be able to outrun. Victory without applause. March 26, 1945. 10:12 hours. The road outside Oppenheim. The surrender is already becoming paperwork. German rifles are stacked neatly, bayonets removed, ammunition counted and logged. Helmets are placed on the ground. Names are taken. Ranks recorded. War reduced to columns and clipboards. Patton watches none of it. He stands apart, boots planted, hands clasped behind his back, staring down the road his army is about to take. Always east. Toward towns whose names blur together. Toward resistance that grows weaker by the mile, and politics that grow stronger by the day. Behind him, the German commander is led away, posture stiff, face unreadable. He does not speak. He does not look back again. Patton lights a cigarette. The flame snaps sharply in the cool air. He inhales once, slowly, then exhales like a man releasing a thought rather than smoke. A colonel approaches cautiously. "Sir," the colonel says, "that could have gone differently." Patton doesn't look at him. "But it didn't," Patton replies. The colonel hesitates. Everyone does around Patton. Not because he's unpredictable, but because he's exact. Every word measured. Every silence deliberate. "You disarmed an entire position without firing a shot," the colonel continues. "That's..." "Don't romanticize it," Patton cuts in. "War doesn't reward poetry." The colonel nods and steps back. Patton flicks ash into the mud. What no one there realizes, not the colonel, not the infantrymen, not even the surrendered Germans, is that this moment will never make the official headlines. There will be no photograph. No press release praising restraint. Because restraint is invisible. And Patton is a man famous for everything else. The convoy begins to move again. Sherman tanks roll forward, engines growling low and steady. Infantry fallen alongside them, boots crunching gravel, rifles slung but ready. As Patton's command jeep pulls onto the road, a young lieutenant jogs alongside. "Sir," he says breathless, "permission to ask a question." Patton doesn't stop walking. "You just did." The lieutenant swallows. "Why didn't you shoot him?" he blurts out. "I mean, after what he said." Patton stops. Turns slowly. Looks at the lieutenant like a teacher deciding whether a student is worth the answer. "Because," Patton says, "that's what he expected." The lieutenant blinks. "In war," Patton continues, "your enemy prepares for bullets. He does not prepare for being ignored." Patton steps back into motion. "But sir," the lieutenant starts. Patton raises a hand, not sharply, just enough. "Lieutenant," he says, "if you ever find yourself eager to pull a trigger, you've already surrendered control." The lieutenant nods, unsure if he understands, but knowing he won't forget it. The jeep pulls away. As the Third Army advances, radio chatter fills the airwaves. Reports come in rapidly: towns surrendered, bridges secured, resistance minimal. Patton's pace remains aggressive, relentless. Too aggressive. That afternoon, miles away, a radio operator at 12th Army Group headquarters writes a brief note into the daily log. It mentions the surrender near Oppenheim. It mentions Patton. It mentions unilateral decision-making. The words are neutral. The tone is not. By evening, the report reaches officers who have never stood on a muddy German road staring down a man willing to die for pride. To them, Patton's restraint is not genius. It's deviation. And deviation is dangerous. That night, Patton sits alone in his quarters, temporary like everything else in Europe. A candle flickers beside a map spread across a wooden table. Red and blue grease pencil lines crisscross the paper like veins. He studies tomorrow's objectives. There's a knock at the door. Enter. An aide steps in holding a folded message. "Sir," he says carefully, "message from higher command." Patton takes it, reads it once, then again. His expression does not change, but something tightens behind his eyes. The message is polite, professional. It requests clarification. Clarification of his handling of enemy surrender negotiations. Clarification of his authority to make on-the-spot decisions involving German command personnel. Clarification of intent. Patton folds the message neatly. Sets it down. "So," he mutters to himself, "now we talk." This is the other battlefield, the one Patton understands just as well. The battlefield of egos. Of generals watching other generals. Of victories measured not only in miles gained but in rules obeyed. Patton knows how this goes. Every moment of restraint will be examined. Every decision dissected by men who weren't there. Men who prefer clean lines on maps to messy human choices. He pours himself a drink. Just a small one. Outside, artillery flashes on the horizon. The war continues, indifferent to paperwork and politics. Patton stares at the message again. He had won the standoff without violence. But now he senses it. A different kind of confrontation is coming. One where his pistols won't help him. Where silence won't intimidate. Where authority alone won't be enough. And this time, the men challenging him won't be wearing enemy uniforms. The Quiet Trial. March 27, 1945. 6:05 hours. A requisition manor house, Western Germany. Morning arrives without ceremony. Mist drapes the fields like unfinished thoughts. Inside the manor, maps cover the walls, creases, pinholes, coffee rings. A clock ticks too loudly. Patton stands at a long table, helmet off, gloves folded with care. He hasn't slept much. He doesn't need to. Across from him sit men who wear the same stars, but carry them differently. The room smells of paper and cold tea. A major clears his throat. General Patton, he begins, reading from a typed page. This review concerns your conduct during the surrender engagement near Oppenheim. Review. Not commendation. Not congratulations. Patton nods once. He does not sit. The major continues. Specifically, your decision to engage directly with an enemy commander, without immediate detention and without use of force. Patton's eyes drift to the window. Fog lifting. Sunlight trying. Force, Patton says quietly, was used. The major looks up. Sir? Patton turns back. Just not the kind you can weigh. A murmur passes along the table. A brigadier shifts in his chair. Another officer taps a pencil, stops himself. A colonel leans forward. General, the concern is precedent. If enemy officers believe they can negotiate by daring our commanders, they won't, Patton says. Come. Flat. They'll believe they can survive. Silence again. Patton reaches to the map behind him. Traces a line east with one finger. It's stained faintly red. Yesterday, he says, we took a road without firing. We gained miles. We gained time. We gained prisoners who didn't die hating us. Pause. You want precedent? Patton continues. There it is. The major glances at his notes. Higher command worries that leniency may be misinterpreted. Patton smiles thinly. Leniency, he repeats. You think I was lenient? He steps closer to the table. Not looming. Grounding. I gave him a choice with teeth, Patton says. I offered him survival without dignity, or dignity without survival. He chose correctly. A brigadier finally speaks. And if he hadn't? Patton doesn't hesitate. Then his position would be ash by nightfall, he says. And my men would still be advancing this morning. The clock ticks. The brigadier nods slowly as if that answers a question he didn't ask out loud. Another officer, older, more cautious, folds his hands. General, your reputation complicates matters. There it is. Patton's reputation enters the room like a ghost. Loud. Inconvenient. Impossible to ignore. Your aggressiveness, the officer continues, has drawn scrutiny before. Incidents. Statements. Decisions taken independently. Patton listens. He always does. He simply doesn't flinch. You're asking whether this was another example, Patton says, or whether it was control. No one answers. Patton answers for them. I didn't fire, he says. I didn't threaten. I didn't grandstand. He pauses. I counted. The officers exchange looks. Counting doesn't sound heroic. It sounds unromantic. It sounds like math. I counted men, Patton continues. Mine and his. I counted shells. Fuel. Roads. Hours. A beat. I counted how much death the moment required. He steps back. It required none. The major lowers his page. For the record, General, are you saying you would make the same decision again? Patton looks at him. Really looks. For the record, Patton says, I'm saying you can't win a war by killing everyone who invites you to. That lands harder than any accusation. The major writes something down. Ink scratches. The clock ticks. Finally, the brigadier stands. This review will be forwarded, he says. No disciplinary action at this time. At this time. Patton nods once. The meeting dissolves. Chairs scrape. Papers gather. Men leave without handshakes. Patton remains a moment longer. Alone again. He exhales. Outside, engines start. Orders travel. The day's violence waits patiently. As Patton steps into the cold, an aide falls in beside him. Young, bright-eyed, trying to read the general's mood. Sir, the aide says, was it worth it? Patton doesn't answer immediately. He watches a column of infantry moving out, muddy boots, tired faces, rifles bouncing lightly against shoulders. Worth it? Patton repeats. He turns to the aide. Every man who walks instead of being carried, he says, is worth explaining myself to a room full of fools. The aide smiles uncertainly. Patton doesn't. They move toward the jeep. As Patton climbs in, he looks back once, toward the west, toward the road near Oppenheim, toward a moment already fading into memory. That German commander will live. He will sit in a camp. He will think. He will remember the general who didn't draw his gun. And somewhere down the line, when the war is a story instead of a wound, that memory will matter. The jeep lurches forward. Another message crackles over the radio. Another town. Another surrender. Another choice waiting to be made. Patton grips the frame, eyes forward. He knows now, this wasn't an exception. It was a method. And methods spread. The method spreads. March 28, 1945. 14:30 hours. Eastern outskirts of Frankfurt. The city breathes smoke. Not the roaring inferno of earlier campaigns, this is quieter now. Chimneys broken. Windows blackened. Streets strewn with paper and plaster like the aftermath of a storm that argued with buildings and won. Patton's forward elements halt at a rail junction. Steel tracks bend into the distance like questions without answers. A white flag appears again, this time tied to a broom handle, raised awkwardly by a trembling hand. Patton isn't there yet. That's the change. A young American captain steps forward instead. Helmet scratched. Voice steady. He remembers the road near Oppenheim. He remembers what he heard Patton say, not loudly, not ceremoniously, but with certainty. The German officer opposite him tries the old script. Straight spine. Empty bravado. You will have to shoot me, the officer says in English. I will not surrender. The captain pauses. He does not signal his men. He does not raise his voice. He looks past the officer, to the rail cars, to the men hiding behind doors and walls, to the math of it all. Sir, the captain says, I don't need to. Confusion flickers across the German officer's face. The captain continues carefully. If you refuse, we'll bypass. Your supply line is already cut. You'll starve here. Or you'll die loud for no reason. The words feel borrowed, but they work. 30 minutes later, weapons clatter to the ground. No shots fired. The radio report travels fast. By evening, similar messages arrive from 3 other units. Different roads. Same outcome. Pause. A conversation. A surrender that doesn't feel like defeat, just exhaustion finally given permission to stop. Patton reads the reports without comment. He doesn't smile. He doesn't nod. He marks progress on the map. To Patton, this isn't philosophy. It's velocity. Every town that surrenders intact saves time. Every unit that lays down arms without a fight preserves momentum. And momentum, Patton believes, is what actually wins wars. That night, in a half-ruined town hall, Patton addresses his regimental commanders. He stands beneath a cracked chandelier, light swinging gently as artillery thumps far away. I won't tell you to negotiate, Patton says. And I won't tell you not to. The room listens. I will tell you this, he continues. If the enemy wants to posture, let him posture alone. You don't reward defiance with attention. You reward it with irrelevance. A commander raises a hand. Sir, what if they're bluffing? Patton looks at him. Then let the bluff collapse under its own weight. Another officer asks, and if they're serious? Patton's answer is immediate. Then end it quickly. No contradiction. No confusion. Choice to Patton is a weapon. After the meeting, Patton remains behind. He stares at the map again. Red lines advancing. Blue lines consolidating. The war thinning like an old scar stretched too far. An aide enters with a folder. Sir, he says, intelligence update. Patton opens it. Inside are reports, not from the front but from Germany's interior. Town councils meeting. Officers debating surrender without orders. Civilians pressuring local commanders to avoid destruction. Patton reads slowly. This is new. Not surrender born of terror, but surrender born of calculation. He closes the folder. They're thinking now, he says quietly. The aide hesitates. Sir? Patton hands the folder back. That's when wars end. But thinking cuts both ways. 2 days later, Patton receives another message from higher command. This one less cautious. More pointed. It warns against informal surrender inducements. Against independent psychological tactics. Against overextension of personal command doctrine. Patton laughs once. Sure. Humorless. They want the enemy predictable, he says to no one in particular. They want me predictable. He folds the message, tucks it away. That evening, a captured German major is brought before him. Older. Tired. Hands steady, eyes not. You are General Patton, the major says. I am, Patton replies. The major hesitates. They say you don't kill men who challenge you. Patton raises an eyebrow. They say many things. The major leans forward slightly. Then why do they surrender? Patton studies him for a long moment. Because, he says, they realize the argument is already over. The major nods slowly. Then perhaps, he says, you are more dangerous than they believe. Patton smiles faintly. Perhaps. As the major is led away, Patton feels it again, that shift. Something moving beyond maps and orders. A reputation changing shape. He is still feared. But now he is also anticipated. And anticipation, Patton knows, can become resistance just as easily as surrender. Late that night, a radio message crackles through static. A German holdout further east. Entrenched. Commanded by an officer known for fanaticism. No white flags. No envoys. Patton listens. Says nothing. The method has reached its limit. He picks up his helmet. Tomorrow, he says, we remind them what comes after choice. Outside, engines start. Tracks grind. Men prepare. The silence is ending. And the next confrontation will not be solved by a watch counting seconds. When silence fails. March 30th, 1945. 4:58 hours. A forested ridge near Fulda. Dawn hasn't decided to arrive yet. Fog grips the trees at knee level, turning trunks into pillars and shadows into guesses. The ground smells like wet leaves and cordite. American artillery crews wait with gloves on, hands hovering, breath shallow. Radios hiss softly, alive, impatient. This time there is no white flag. Patton stands beside a map laid across the hood of a jeep. A flashlight beam cuts across contour lines and penciled notes. He traces a ridge, then stops. They're dug in, an intelligence officer says. Veterans. Fanatics. Orders to hold. Patton nods. He already knows. You can feel it when a position intends to die. He closes the map. Did we offer? He asks. Yes, sir. Envoys turned back. Shots fired overhead. Patton looks toward the tree line. Somewhere in that fog are men who will not choose. Men who believe resistance is identity. He removes his gloves. Flexes his fingers once. Then we proceed. No anger. No disappointment. Just procedure. The order moves fast. Batteries align. Elevations set. The guns do not roar yet, they wait. Patton lifts his head, eyes narrowing as if giving the ridge one last chance to speak. It doesn't. He lowers his hand. Artillery answers. The first shells land heavy, punching fog into bursts. The forest shudders. Branches snap. Earth jumps. The sound rolls, not chaotic but measured. Correct. A brutal geometry. Patton watches without expression. This is the other half of the lesson. Across the line, German bunkers shake. Men who scoffed at negotiation grip walls and helmets and each other. The ridge that refused to be irrelevant now becomes a target, precise, unarguable. Infantry moves when the barrage lifts. They advance through smoke and splintered trees, boots finding craters, rifles steady. Resistance sputters, then breaks. Some Germans emerge stunned, hands raised, too late for dignity but not too late for survival. By 7-10 hours it's over. Casualties are counted. The math is grim but finite. The road beyond the ridge opens. Patton doesn't linger. He walks the ground briefly, eyes scanning the damage. He stops near a shattered bunker entrance. Inside, a helmet lies upside down, rain collecting in its curve. An aide approaches carefully. Sir, he says, message traffic's already started. Patton nods. Let it. They move on. Word spreads quietly, efficiently. The contrast becomes the message. Those who talk live. Those who posture vanish. Not theatrically. Not vengefully. Predictably. 2 days later, another German officer is brought in under a flag. Younger than the last. Nervous. He has heard the stories now. He chooses his words carefully. I am authorized to discuss terms, he says. Patton listens. Asks questions. Sets conditions. No watches. No countdowns. The power has shifted. The theater is unnecessary. The surrender follows. That night, Patton writes a brief note to himself, 3 lines folded into a pocket notebook. Offer the door. Close it when refused. Never pretend the house isn't on fire. He snaps the book shut. This isn't mercy versus cruelty. It's clarity. And clarity moves armies faster than fear. As April presses on, the Third Army rolls through towns that would have burned a month earlier. Bridges stand. Civilians step out, cautious, alive. The war thins again. Patton stands on a hill overlooking a valley, tanks moving below like iron tide. An aide asks, "Sir, how do you want this remembered?" Patton doesn't answer at first. "Remembered?" he repeats finally. "Wars don't remember. Men do." He turns away. Somewhere behind the lines, a German commander sits in captivity, replaying a minute that changed everything. Somewhere else, another commander weighs his options, and chooses not to test Patton's patience. The method has hardened now. Not a rumor. A rule. And as the Reich collapses inward, one truth spreads faster than the armies themselves. If you dare Patton, you better mean it. The weight of command. April 2nd, 1945. 16:45 hours. A ridge overlooking the main river. Patton sits alone in a jeep, helmet resting on his knee, map unfolded but untouched. Sun slants through clouds, casting a sharp light over the river valley. Smoke rises faintly from distant towns, painting the horizon with gray streaks. It is quiet, deceptively so. The calm before momentum becomes consequence. A runner approaches, boots squelching in mud. Breathless. "Sir, another surrender request. Major unit near Hanau." No resistance reported. Patton doesn't move immediately. He leans back, eyes narrowing, considering. Not just the surrender, but the human equation behind it. Every soldier who lays down arms preserves lives, both theirs and his men's. Every refusal, conversely, is a measure of chaos to be managed. He finally speaks, voice low, controlled, precise. "Prepare the envoys. Take only 2 minutes. Let them see we are patient, but not indulgent." The aide nods, writing rapidly. Patton's gaze returns to the valley below. Rivers, roads, and rail lines crisscross in perfect geometry, yet every line is soaked in human hesitation and dread. Maps are neat. War is not. And that is the burden, to bend chaos into order without breaking the fragile threads that tether soldiers to life. In the distance, a German officer emerges alone, hands empty, face pale but defiant. He approaches slowly. Each step is weighted, deliberate, rehearsed. He knows the legend of the man he faces. He expects confrontation. Punishment. Yet he walks anyway. Patton rises. Not aggressively. Not ceremonially. Just rises. The officer stops 20 meters away. The 2 men meet, not physically but in the invisible space of command. Power, reputation, and decision hang like a taut wire between them. "I have orders," the German officer begins. "I will not surrender my unit without proof they are safe." Patton studies him. Eyes calm, calculating. The air hums, quiet but intense. For a moment, nothing moves. The valley itself seems to pause. Patton leans slightly forward. "And if I cannot provide proof immediately?" The German officer swallows. The answer is obvious, but he hesitates. Ego battles survival. Tradition wrestles pragmatism. Seconds stretch into eternities. Patton does not raise his voice. Does not gesture. His presence alone is the argument. Authority distilled into posture, gaze, and silence. And then he says, softly, almost conversational, "The only proof you need is your life. Choose wisely." The German officer's eyes flicker. Not at the general, but at his own men waiting beyond the tree line. Fear, loyalty, pride, and instinct collide. He realizes he stands at the crossroads between survival and irrelevance. One decision, one breath will determine the fates of dozens. Finally, after a beat that feels like a heartbeat suspended in time, he nods. Slowly. Hesitantly. Relief mingled with shame. Patton watches him turn, raise a white flag, and call back to his soldiers. Rifles lower. Boots stop. Breath slows. Hearts do too, those waiting and those observing. The moment is over. And yet, in its quiet, invisible way, it carries more weight than a battle won with fire. Patton does not smile. He does not acknowledge the surrender. He turns back to the valley. Orders flow through radios. Units move. Momentum continues. But in that stillness, in that fraction of decision, Patton bears witness to something few ever see, The raw calculus of leadership where survival depends not on bullets, but on presence, authority, and timing. As his staff boards the jeep, he mutters almost to himself, "Control the choice. And you control the war." Somewhere behind him, the stories of the surrendered men will ripple, through camps, villages, and towns. The legend spreads silently. Patton doesn't shoot first. But he always wins. And somewhere else, a general in headquarters notes this pattern, frowning. Not everyone understands it. Some never will. The war moves forward. The Third Army advances. Cities fall. The Reich crumbles. But the lesson lingers, etched into the consciousness of every soldier who has seen it. Command is heavier than any weapon. Authority sharper than any blade. And restraint, sometimes deadlier than a gun. The minute that echoed. April 5, 1945. 8:15 hours. Near the Rhine, Germany. A cold wind sweeps across the riverbank, carrying the smell of mud, gun oil, and smoke from distant towns. Patton stands at the edge of the water, binoculars in hand, watching the last pockets of resistance crumble like sandcastles under the tide. Tanks rumble behind him, infantry advancing, signals flashing. The world is moving fast. Too fast for most men to notice the moments that truly define it. He recalls the German commander near Oppenheim. The words, "You'll have to kill me," and the choice he made. Not to fire. Not to threaten. Not to perform theatrics for the men watching. He had allowed a single minute to decide everything. A minute where lives, pride, and legacy collided. That minute had shifted more than a surrender, it had shifted perception. Enemy officers began to calculate differently. His own men began to trust differently. Even the higher command, those removed from the mud, the fear, the frozen seconds, would have to acknowledge, eventually, the force of restraint. A young officer approaches, notebook in hand, hesitant. "Sir, do you think it matters?" Patton lowers his binoculars. Eyes sharp, voice low but firm. Every second a man chooses life over defiance matters. Every second a soldier sees reason and survives is a victory. Not the headline kind. Not the kind printed in black and white. But the kind that wins wars. The officer nods, scribbling. The wind whips through the trees, scattering leaves. Somewhere, a German soldier, years older now, remembers that 1 minute on a muddy road and feels a chill, not from fear but from realization. Patton turns, gesturing to the convoy forming behind him. "Move out," he says. "The war doesn't wait. And neither do I." Engines roar. Tracks grind. Radios buzz with reports of towns secured, bridges intact, units surrendered. But in the mind of every soldier, American and German alike, the story of 1 minute spreads quietly. 1 minute in which authority was exercised, ego was tested, and a life was spared by the courage not to kill. In the coming weeks, historians would debate Patton's methods. Generals would argue the ethics, the rules, the precedent. Some would call it genius. Others reckless. But for those who stood on the muddy roads, watched a man choose strategy over instinct, the truth was clear. Patton understood power differently. It wasn't in bullets or blood. It was in decisions. In timing. In the unspoken dominion of control. The sun rises fully now, cutting through the fog. Patton surveys the river, the road, the towns yet to be reached. He knows the war is almost over. But the minute near Oppenheim, that singular heartbeat of decision, will echo far longer than any gunshot ever could. And somewhere across the lines of shattered Germany, that echo teaches a lesson older than war itself. Strength is not always about force. Sometimes it is about knowing when not to use it. Patton turns to move with his army, boots sinking into the soft earth, eyes forward. The surrender is complete. The story is finished. The world continues.